Good afternoon, good evening, good morning for some of you. Welcome to our Big Book 12-Step Workshop. My name is Herb. I'm an alcoholic, if I didn't say that. Please join me for a prayer, an attitude, an inspiration and intention of having an open mind and an open heart. God, please set aside everything that I think I know about myself, my brokenness, the 12 steps, and you for an open mind and a new experience of myself, my brokenness, the 12 steps, and especially you. Please join me in the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. On page 7, he says, if you have been thorough about your personal inventory, now he's talking about the whole perspective on step 4. We have written down a lot. You have a binder probably with a lot of paper. We have listed and analyzed our resentments, column 3 and column 4. We have begun to comprehend their futility and their fatality. We have commenced to see their terrible destructiveness. We have begun to learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill toward men, toward people, even our enemies, for we look on them as sick people. So he's referred to column 3, where we're looking at our beliefs, and now he's referring to the prayer for the removal of deep resentment. And then he's going to refer to the column 4. We have listed the people we have hurt in our conduct and are willing to straighten out the past if we can. Those are the questions that we didn't address, questions 6 and 7, in the column 4 worksheet. We will look at those when we get to step 8. In this book, you read again and again that faith did for us what we could not do for ourselves. That's the definition of a spiritual awakening, right? A change in the way we think and feel and behave, and is done to us, not by us. We hope you are convinced. That was the same counsel he gave us in step 3. Page 60. Being convinced. We are at ABCs. We hope you are convinced now that God can remove whatever self-will has blocked us off from him. Self-will is his inclusive category for the entire step 4 inventory process. And he's referring to the sunlight of the Spirit in us, and these being the clouds in us that block us from the sunlight. I'm tying some of the metaphors together that I've used and that I believe Bill uses consistently throughout the book. If you have already made a decision, step 3, and an inventory of your grosser handicaps, step 4, I really wish he would have used that sentence at the beginning of the step 4 inventory. It would give people a real idea that this is not about mosquitoes, grosser handicaps. You have made a good beginning. In the same way at step 3, he said, this is only a beginning. At the conclusion of step 4, it's only a beginning. A beginning of what? A beginning of the turning. That being so, you have swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about yourself. Just writing it and working with a sponsor or step guide, you've done incremental work of seeing the truth and of accepting it. I believe the real final acceptance of that truth is when you read it out loud consecutively for the very first time in the fifth step. I put together assignment 17 because in my experience, there were some things about dishonesty that had not been surfaced in the instructions that I had received from my 3-step guides. But I knew that that was important. Bill talks about the 7 capital sins in the 12 and 12. I don't use that model. I don't find it productive for me, but many people do, with some psychological sophistication that most of us have these days. I use the terms guilt and shame, and then I go on to embarrassment, because I believe relapse and or maybe even addiction in its beginning comes from the effort at the reduction in tension in our lives. It's really that simple. How do we receive homeostasis? If I'm thirsty, I take a drink of water. If I'm hungry, I eat some food. If I have tension, I use alcohol. That was my go-to. I began learning that in my home, my family of origin at 12 years old. And I didn't learn until I was 43, 44, that it had become a problem. Irresponsibility, disturbance. I use that word that comes out of the 12 and 12 in step 10. Once again, a catch-all phrase that captures this tension in us that is the human condition. Bill says, watch for resentment and fear and dishonesty and selfishness when they crop up, not if, and they will create tension. He uses the term disturbed in the 12 and 12. Whenever I'm disturbed, it's a broad net, a broad category. It doesn't give it any specificity. Whenever I'm disturbed, and there'll be many variations on the theme and vocabulary words that we can use to describe it, but that one word captures it all. I'm disturbed. And then this man who took me through the work the very first time very much stressed secrets. I don't believe that word actually is used in the big book. I'm not sure. I'll have to do a word search on it. But you've heard it in the rooms, I'm sure. We're as sick as our secrets. It's just wonderful wisdom, actually. We become brain dead to it. It really means, are you hiding anything? Are you uncomfortable with something? Even if you've talked about it before and it's not really a secret, your therapist knows, your attorney knows, your spouse knows, but if you're uncomfortable with it, still, that's where the tension, that's where the disturbance come from. That's where the relapse will potentially metastasize from. And then also, I've had to deal with this regularly since probably the beginning of the workshops 25 years ago, and that is people are so grateful for the experience, and many people express that gratitude in a personal thanks to me and putting me on a pedestal in terms of a leader or a teacher and or whatever else synonyms they use. And I understand it's very human, but it's counterproductive for people to be talking about doing the steps Herb's way or Herb's program of the 12 steps, because it's not mine. I'm certainly the facilitator and the translator of the big book into words and experiences that probably help a lot of people. But if you could refrain from throwing too many lotus blossoms at my feet whenever you're talking about me publicly, that would probably be in your best interest and my best interest. And quite frankly, it makes it more attractive rather than a cult of personalities. It's really an experience with the Big Book and the step process. I appreciate your appreciation, and I'm not discouraging positive comments at all. I'm just saying in public or with your sponsees and or in your meetings especially, probably best to talk about some way without referencing Herb K. I don't mind getting the visibility in terms of my website and my resources. And so that's a tricky thing to kind of navigate. My first sponsor, I've only had 2 sponsors. My first sponsor I had for 28 years fired me because I had a website, and he's old school. He felt that that was contrary to the program of attraction rather than promotion, and I had outgrown him anyway. I was prepared for that, and I had another sponsor in waiting, and I've had him now for the last 7, 8, 10 years, I guess. Don't need to get into any controversy about any of that, but the spirit is anonymity, the spirit of anonymity, and it's about humility, and it's about a spiritual principle. I want to help. I do help, and I know that. And you can figure out a way to communicate the message without glorifying the messenger, if you don't mind. I think that's enough. So I'm feeling very concluded with the step 4 instructions. And let's talk about any questions or concerns that you have, or any work that you want to do about any aspect of the step 4 inventory.
So I'd just like to say, last week I didn't come to the meeting, and because I was so afraid, Herb.
Of what?
Of this sex inventory, of just, and fear has been such a part of my life for so long. And I really, for the most part, am able to muster the courage and do whatever is in front of me to do. But last week, I just was terrified. And
it's great from a standpoint that you sort of took care of yourself. It probably would have been a healthier decision to come and face it, but you took care of yourself. And so what brought you today to even actually admit it?
Well, after I didn't come to the Thursday meeting, I made a lot of phone calls to people who I know and people who I trust. And I talked about my fears, and I was able to put a name to them.
Wonderful.
And, mostly, how many people here? 92 people, who the majority of them, I don't know you.
Yeah.
And trust has always been a factor for me. And, anyway, so I made a lot of phone calls, and I was encouraged that I don't need to tell you my sexcapades in the details.
Well,
but that was in my head.
Yes, I get that. All right. Yeah. Kind of like being embarrassed because of the behavior. And if you paid attention to my unpacking of the Big Book, not once did it mention anything about behavior with regard to sex. Not gender, not frequency, not position. There was no talk about sex itself. What was it talking about? Motives,
selfishness,
and impact on other people.
Right.
Exactly, because it's not about the behavior. We're all human beings, and we're just variations on a theme.
But that you just mentioned during your little talk before we started about what was it you said? Not shame. I forget what you said, but secrets. I came into recovery 32 years ago with a lot of secrets secrets that were going to go to the grave with me.
Yep.
And thank you, God, I found somebody to talk to about those secrets with. So anyway, I'm here this week, and I'll tell you what, that fear and looking at this stuff that I have looked at this week made me very hungry, Herb. Hungry, like appetite hungry. I had, you know, it just stirred up so much inside of me. And for me, food is anesthesia.
Yeah, I get it.
You know, it's absolutely anesthesia. That's what food does for me.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to. Yeah, I'm not proud of the person who I wrote about.
Yes.
You know, and
that person doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, you're right. To a huge extent, she does not exist anymore.
That's right.
So anyway, I did this. I did a sex inventory. You know, I did a chronological, you know, when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, right? And then on up through my husband's and present day. So this is just one. Bob was 41 years old. I was 25. He picked me up in a bar. So our sex inventory, mine in particular, was fueled by alcohol.
You bet.
Right?
You bet.
And so I wasn't really interested in, but the sex was great. And so, you know, I had never experienced anything like that before, you know. I had been married, and this was like totally new for me, and I wanted more, like a kid in a candy shop.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So, so I wasn't really interested in him, Herb. Right. And a huge fear for me is hurting somebody. Sure. And I will marry you so that I don't hurt your feelings.
Wow.
So anyway, I could not leave this man, even though I was interested. So there was like two sides of the same coin. The sex was great, but I wasn't really interested.
I'm appreciative of your vulnerability and your openness. It's really, did you answer the 9 questions?
I did. Number 1. So where had I been selfish? I used him for sex.
Yeah, right.
I used him for sex.
Yeah.
And he adored me.
Yep.
I had never been adored in my life.
Yep.
And I reveled in that.
Yeah.
I just.
The words I used him says everything.
Yeah. Right. That's exactly right. I mean, number 2 was, where had I been dishonest? Oh, in every single area other than when we were in bed. I was dishonest with him. I told him I loved him. Kept accepting the gifts and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So 3, where had I been inconsiderate? I was so selfish. I never thought about him and the impact that this relationship. Right. And, you know, up until probably last week, I never really thought of it, that the impact that I had on this man.
That was the biggest impact on me, was thinking about the impact I had on other people. And at age 48, it had never occurred to me that there was impact. Collateral damage was just part of the living of life. I literally had a hardened attitude about it. So, yeah.
And the lying that I did to preserve the illusion.
Right. So whom had you hurt?
I definitely hurt him, but I also hurt myself.
Okay.
I mean, you know, I was not interested in this man, and I stayed with this man because what about what I needed?
Yeah.
You know? So anyway, 4, I definitely, that number 5 is what?
Aroused jealous.
Absolutely, and I reveled in it.
Yeah, you were a flirt and a hunter.
I hate that.
Well,
Yeah.
You said it. I went to the Air Force to hunting for my next prospect.
I was shopping for my next.
Well,
Right,
you used the word
exactly.
shopping. I put it in a bigger context.
So anyway, number 6, did I arouse suspicion? Absolutely.
Sure.
He'd see a picture of me with somebody else, and
Right.
I'd make up this big lie. And
Right.
7, bitterness. I don't know. I never talked to him again after he broke up with me. I imagine there was a great deal of bitterness.
Well, but the right answer is I don't know. I imagine there was, and it's okay because it's not really at this point. It's not an important question. We're building to number 9, which is the crescendo.
Okay, I should have been courageous enough to speak my truth, that I was interested in sex, but not in a relationship.
Yeah.
I did not love him. Thoughtless discussions based on my wants. I wish to be faith-based, that God will take care of both of us,
All right.
no matter what the truth is.
Yeah.
But anybody deserves the truth, and they can make a decision from that point on.
Right.
So anyway, that's what I did.
See, that's an operating principle. That's a magnificent operating principle, that I'm going to tell the truth and I'm going to deal with people as they're adults, that they can handle the truth and make their own decisions about their lives. That's a huge operating principle.
I really like it. I would like to incorporate that into the woman I am.
Well, you probably have, and you're just now making it conscious. Yeah.
Anyway, so that's it, Herb.
Well, that's quite a turnaround from the fear that prevented you from coming to the call last week.
Really was. My peer group, my assignment group was so helpful to me, Herb.
Well, I'm glad you're sharing it that way, because that reinforces our recommendation to have at least a person and or a small group to help support this journey.
In my 3rd column, I wrote that I'm a loving, caring daughter, the best. But I have never felt like that. That doesn't even ring remotely true to me. I never felt like I was the best daughter. I always felt like I failed again and again and again. So her response was, well, if you didn't have this belief somewhere that you're a loving, caring daughter, you wouldn't carry the resentment. So do I even have a resentment? Is what I'm...
No, it's a very healthy question here. I'm hearing regret.
Yes.
And the possibility, I haven't heard it as enough to really claim it, but the possibility of grief, but certainly of regret. I'm hearing that very loud and clear.
I mean,
So why don't you use the word regret?
Oh, yeah.
And do the 3rd column using that word and see what happens. And you could experiment with the word grief, but I didn't hear it as much as I heard that term regret.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's true.
And I didn't hear any anger or resentment, shock, and
I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I can write about.
Sadness, yeah.
Right, and he was violent. He was very mercurial.
Yeah.
Really created a lot of grief for my mom.
It sounds like he was emotionally imbalanced. So but you need to rather than deal with your father, because he's not the issue, actually. Your feelings about it are the issue. Right? Now, your feeling doesn't appear to be resentment.
Not that I can access.
Well, exactly. So you can only deal with what you can access and try the regret. You might experiment with the grief or sadness. Sadness might be a more word that you can get some traction on. I don't know, but yeah, and just in prayer, be very open to listening to your heart here, because you're probably fairly also defended against the depth of the feeling that is possibly there.
No question.
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact that, when I started trying to think about my sexual inventory, and by the way, thank you for insisting that we're not behind, because I'm convinced I'm like 3 months behind.
Good. I said it for you.
Oh, thank you. But when I started thinking about that and looking at that, you know, I mean, I haven't been in a relationship in over 30 years. And after my own hospitalization, and you know, it took me a long, long time to get well. And I think how I've always operated and what the sort of new experience is for me is going beyond intellectual understanding of my victimization and self-victimization to a real feeling of the loss in my life of having always felt like I was not adequate, that I was bad, that there was something so terribly wrong with me that I was unlovable.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, probably the biggest realization I've had in this workshop is the third step, when I just made a decision that there is a God. That's it. That's all I did. I don't even know what that thing is.
Yep.
I don't know what it feels like to have faith.
Nope.
But I just made a decision that there's a God, and I'm just going to proceed accordingly.
Yep.
And what's very challenging to me is now opening up to not just the possibility that there's a God or the reality that there's a God, but the possibility that I am beloved.
Yeah. Wow.
That is not what I got as a kid.
No, this is very new territory.
Despite years of talking about this stuff, it's like tectonic plates.
Yeah. Yeah. But you see, you're making a huge, huge move from the head to the heart. You have the information and you've stayed up there talking about it. But now the bottom has fallen out and it's opening up a channel to the heart where you're beginning to have feelings about it.
And my behaviors sexually and romantically have always been either clinging, like by my fingernails,
Yeah.
or just.
Sure. Right. Right. Yep.
And
yep. That's the yin and the yang of it, isn't it? The polar opposites. And the benefit here of the sex inventory is to answer question number 9.
yes.
What do you want?
What do I? And I don't know. I don't have an answer for that.
Then in prayer, you just ask the question. You know, you've indicated you haven't had a relationship in 30 years. At this point, do you want one? And if you do, what would it look like?
Animal sanctuary.
Say it again. Say it again.
I'd rather start a farm animal sanctuary.
Well, you know, these are your choices, though. Thank God for consciousness.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, you get a chance to make a decision as to how you want to lead your life. The book doesn't have any guidelines there other than be honest with yourself in a conversation with God.
And I think I've operated, you know, and working the steps this way has helped me to see that I've always said that I've done this, but I'm really feeling how much I've lived my life as though everything is a rehearsal, that the real stuff is going to come eventually. Like whatever this isn't real. That, you know, my real moment on the stage is still out there.
Yeah.
And it's not true. You know, that's it's in wherever you go, there you are. This is it. This is all there is. And
yeah.
And starting to feel the urgency of that in my life, and and to not get sucked into the undertow of what hasn't happened for me, marriage and children, and you know.
Yes, or the undertow of what it coulda, shoulda.
Right.
That's equally as devastating, and it's just not real. It's a dark rabbit hole that doesn't go anyplace.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I feel like where I'm at in the process is just holding a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just holding a lot that I'm getting words for.
Yes.
And I'm a writer. You would think that I would have figured this out before, but and I guess, you know, there have been any number of moments in the last month where I've just wanted to chuck it and say, I've gone as far as I can. This is, compared to where I was 20 years ago.
Right.
It's hard to see where I've been selfish with regard to my dad.
Well, you need to not sit and speculate about it, because that's just swimming in the sewer.
Yeah.
You need to do the worksheet intentionally, be in prayer around that question that's in page 68 that I asked everybody to create for themselves. What is my role that I've been given in my life? You've thought out sufficiently now that there's a channel open to you that will give it a richness that wasn't available to you before. Now you can attach feelings to some thoughts.
Yeah.
And try to define, so what does it look like to have a sense of contentment and purpose in life today, not tomorrow or next week? Yep.
I don't know.
No, you don't. No, but if you have the right question and you hold it during this process, my experience is at the end of the 9th step, you are given the gift of an answer. Not that you figure out the syllogism and the formula. That's just not my experience.
I intellectualize everything, though. I have
Well, of course, it's a great defense against reality.
It really is.
Yeah. Well, not really, but that's what we pretend it is.
Right. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Just, and I guess the overriding emotion that has revealed itself to me through all of this is shame. I am absolutely riddled with it.
All right.
Fear and shame, fear and shame, fear and shame.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to not be held by those two emotions.
Well, how does the turtle move forward?
One step at a time.
Puts its head out first.
Yeah, it does.
And then puts its legs out of the shell and starts moving. You got to see where you're going before you move your feet.
Oh.
And so you do this work, and you continue to take direction, and you continue to show up and embrace the fact that there's a fancy word that one of my teachers uses. It took me a while to really understand what it means. You're in the liminal space.
Yes. Yes.
You're in the corridor. You've come out of one room.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to another room, but you don't know where the room is, let alone how to get there. Exactly. You're in the corridor.
Exactly. And that fills me with so much dread.
Oh.
Because I have always needed to know exactly where I am.
Yeah, of course, because you wanted to control your life.
Yes. Yeah. And nothing was in control. And
that's your total experience.
And my dad used to joke that if we needed to figure out where we were, ask me. At 7 years old, I could tell him which direction to take on a back road. I just simply knew. And because I was vigilant, I was hyper vigilant. Yeah. I am hyper vigilant.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God. So this is heavy lifting for me.
It is indeed, for all of us, actually. Yeah.
I know. There's nothing special about me. I just.
Well, you're the center of your life.
I am, but I walked around thinking that nobody has my story.
Yeah.
Nobody does. It's my story.
Yeah, but you don't have their story either.
Exactly. And I know that intellectually. This is all.
Yeah.
And so ping-ponging between sort of the inner child work and this adult work I'm being pulled, like a rubber band.
Actually, maybe there's you're not actually being pulled. You're having your entire world deconstructed.
Yeah.
And you're using 2 bulldozers to do it.
Yeah.
So just, be where you're at and figure out what the blueprint is.
Okay.
All right? Yeah. And it sounds very vague, and it sounds, well, vague is really the word. But trust this process, trust this group. And you're doing other work too. I won't comment on that, but just stay with this work and see where it takes you.
Yeah.
Because you're in the midst of it now. You can't see where you're going right now. There's a lot of fog around it.
There's a lot of fog.
Yeah.
London, circa 1863.
There you go. All right. Thanks.
Thank you, Herb. I appreciate it very much.
You bet.
I'm going back to assignment 17 for a second, because it's kind of tied in. There's lots of secrets around sex.
Yes.
And it says here, do you have any secrets? What you're asking us or suggesting for us to do is just write them out, correct?
Yes. It might be that I'm really hearing your question, and I'm challenging myself as to what I actually did. I might have only put down like 2 or 3 words to represent what the secret was, so that when I came to my 5th step, then I would describe it there rather than put it all in writing in case my inventory was found, quite frankly.
Okay.
Yeah. I had the experience that my wife knows I'm in inventory, and she actually looked for it and found it once or twice, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I live alone, so I don't have to worry about anybody finding it. And if they do, they're going to have some good reading. They better grab a cup of coffee.
Yeah, well, there you go. All right, excellent. And so I'm glad you asked that question. And I'm not. Is that a reasonable answer for you?
Yeah, it is. It is, because I can jot down some things about that, and I just kind of needed to make sure, I know what I'm trying to do here. If I can get away without writing something, I will. I'll put it that way. So it's good to know that that's a good way to do it.
It's not about how you say reducing the amount of work that you have. That's not the point at all. But it's what's going to be helpful is that you talk about it.
Right.
That's really what's going to be helpful. Now, if in fact you have any reason to elaborate in your own handwriting what it is so that you can read it out and be very clear and specific, then certainly write it out. But I think a 2 or 3 or 4 words to kind of remind you of what the secret is so that you can disclose the secret, because it's not about reciting a long story about a secret.
Okay.
It's about revealing the secret.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess I want to just say what I've observed, because I'm done with the work. All I have to do in my sex inventory is write the ideal. And, I've been married. I've been with the same person for 38 years.
Nice.
So what I've kind of arrived at is to be a friend.
Nice.
And so what I've noticed now that I've gotten towards the end, well, I'm going to start with 2 weeks ago, I spoke with you, and it was actually about speaking in public, fear of speaking in public. And as we talked about it, it got down to being authentic. And so since then, and I try to share authentically no matter what, but there's so much going on before I do that. And so now I have been just practicing, as I am right now, just get on there, try to set it all aside.
Oh, yeah.
Set it all aside. One task to be authentic. How do I feel right now? This is tough with the anxiety, but I've been doing that. And I even went back and I listened to the recording, which I was terrified to do, because in my mind, I have a horrible voice. I sound like an idiot. Not you personally. You could be anyone. I'm not afraid of you. You could be anyone. And Herb was impatient. He was sick of listening to me. I listened to it, and that's not what happened at all. I heard a woman, I'm not a girl, I think I'm 23, but I'm 60.
I get it.
I heard a woman who has a pretty pleasant voice, who's actually a pretty nice person. And I heard you being very kind and engaged with that separation. And that was huge. That was really a very
I'm so glad that you're saying it that way, because it's a tool that you're exploring with us. People can wonder how they sounded or how the conversation went, but when you re-listen to it outside of the conversation, you can hear it more objectively.
Well, it took all the fantasy out of it.
There.
I've had the same sponsor for a long time. I'm even going to, and I normally wouldn't do this, but I'm going to have her listen to it. I'm not going to give her just listen to this. Tell me what you think. Because she's always told me, you are so hard on yourself. People like you. I don't believe it. So that was huge. And in doing this work this time, I didn't do as much work as I did the first time. But now I am really realizing, particular to my marriage or all of the people that quit talking to me and my mom, that it was always me. It was always me. I didn't stand up. Even this latest thing that happened recently, I never really loved the word boundary, but I never said, you know what, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I never grew up. And so I'm watching myself. And P.S., 9 months ago, when I've always wanted to meditate, I call it meditation, it's called prayer, practice. And I was never able to pull that together in all these years. And somehow this centering prayer that you've introduced us to, I'm telling you, Herb, every day, twice a day, wow, without exception for 9 solid months. And what I heard a girl say today, it doesn't matter what's happening during my meditation time.
That's correct.
It's outside of the time.
That's correct.
And I went, oh yeah, I remember Herb saying that, and other meditators. And I went, you know what? Because I was thinking, oh, my mind's still so busy. But actually what's happened in this year, this insane year, I'm experiencing joy that in going on 18 years in program, I wasn't recognizing. And so I'm experiencing joy, and also really noticing my anxiety and kind of befriending myself in that, going, oh, wow. Yeah, that's just me. So these are huge things to notice.
They really are. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that. And I appreciate this conversation. I feel that you're very patient. When I listen to you talking to me, because in my mind, the man must be wanting to kill himself talking to me. That's not what was happening. I don't think. I'm not in your head. I think I'm in everyone's head. I don't know what people are thinking. The way you acted was very kind.
Yeah. Interesting. I would be curious. Thank you for sharing all of that. I would be curious to know, you did the work from the website and on your own, and then you've been involved with this weekly workshop here. How much of the work did you do during this journey, or were you merely sort of participating as like you would a meeting and having it confirm and clarify the work that you've already done?
The very first time I spoke with you, I asked you about that, and you said, treat it as a meeting. Yeah. I said, I need direction.
I remember
what
that.
am I doing here? Yeah. And he said, treat it as a good meeting. Yeah. And if anything feels like do the work. And so I ended up doing probably 5 or 6 third and fourth columns.
Oh.
I did just all of the fear. I wrote a lot of fears, which I went over with you 2 weeks ago, one of them. And then I did the fear worksheet. I did the sex inventory current to this year, yep, given that I'm married. Like, yep, all of the other, I just set it aside, and then this year. And now I just need to write my vision statement for that, which isn't quite clear to me.
And so then the follow-up, thank you. That's wonderfully clear in terms of the contrast. In terms of the experience that you had doing that from the website and on your own, and now the experience that you're having now, can you comment on any of that?
I can, Herb. It's once again, this has been a crazy year with
Yeah.
this Zoom, and so this whole format is different. Everything was different.
That's great.
I'm a pretty introverted person. I'm very motivated to do my own work. So to do it on on the website was not difficult for me. I've recommended that to other people and it just wouldn't, they couldn't stick with it. For me, that was very rich.
Nice.
I did all of it. I did it very thoroughly. This has been great too.
Yeah.
This has been great too.
It sounds like this has been more a fine tuning though.
This has been a fine tuning, a little bit of it. And I realize it's just the way I am. I had beat myself up a bit because I didn't get in a group. When it was, let's get some groups of people to work together. I didn't do that.
Yeah.
And I sort of shamed myself. I didn't do that. Maybe I'll do it in the future. Maybe that would be good. This was actually pretty good for me. Yeah. It would be a different experience.
It would be different. And it sounds to me like you're becoming quite conscious of how negative and hard you are on yourself and how that's not really very helpful.
I'm more aware of myself having done the amount of work I've done until this point. But I notice, and I relate to what the lady said before, that she thinks she's in other people's heads, or, well, anyway, I have difficulty listening. I think that maybe everybody should think like me, or my way is the right way, or so I'm wondering if you can give me some tips about that, maybe what it was like for you when you really began to listen, to be able to listen to another human being and know that you're really separate from them. So how do I proceed to develop my listening skills? I guess that's my question.
Yeah. Well, first of all, to be conscious that you want to improve your listening skills. I thought I was a good listener. I mean, I even had an education based on being trained to be a Catholic priest, to listen and to hear confession. I did a training to become a psychologist to do the therapy that goes along with that. I did therapy myself. Getting therapy for myself. And so I always thought that I was inclined to and or being a good listener until I did my fourth step out of the book at 4 years. And then I realized, no, I was very self-centered and I only pretended to listen in order to have them value me. And it made total sense to me when my wife and I were first married. Within the first 2 years, she said, there must be something wrong with your hearing, Herb. So I went to an audiologist and I went into the booth and they did all the things. And as I was walking out, he had a big smile on his face. He said, you do not have a listening problem. Excuse me, you do not have a hearing problem. You have a listening problem. Now, I didn't hear that. I didn't believe it, of course. But after I did my fourth step and I understood how self-centered I was, then I understood what she had originally been saying all along. Then I became interested in listening because I wanted to help other people. And so there was the motivation. The biggest difference was soon after I had done so I'm glad you asked the question because I've got a little bit of a longer story about that, but an experience with it. soon after I had finished the work and I wanted to be a good sponsor, I took some training to be a spiritual director in order to become a good sponsor. But I was introduced to a personality theory over a 3-day weekend called the Enneagram. And I'll talk more about that when we get to step 6 and 7. It's in the Way of Life document a little bit. Not the teaching about it, but the reference to it. But what I really discovered there, or heard for the very first time, is that people are not better or worse than, they're just different. Some people are oriented to their head, some people are oriented to their heart, and some people are oriented to their gut in terms of the way they perceive reality, and that's the way they're built. Okay. They're different, not because it's less or better, they're different because they're just different. And it was like, oh my God, that was like a huge revelation to me. And then I was able to even listen better, because I'm not, I think you just said it, I expect everybody to think and feel and react just like me. And yeah. I know that's what I did in those days. But once I understood that, no, Kim says she's an introvert. Well, I'm a marginal extrovert introvert, but I know that there are some people that are extremely extroverted. It's not their fault, and it's not that to their credit. It's not Kim's fault that she's an introvert, and it's not to her credit. It's just the way she's built. And it was kind of like, oh, that's a long answer, but it's a really important issue that you raised. Can you talk to me about what you've heard and did it make any difference?
Well, today I was giving a thought that I had, an idea that I had to a friend about how I thought she could get in touch with something. And so being the drama person and being the mystic, you know, that's how I relate to spirit and the world, you know, and that was my studies, was theater and drama. My suggestion was, well, why don't you place yourself physically in the position of, it was Christ in the garden. It was the Garden of Gethsemane, to experience, try to feel the experience, okay. You know. And my friend's response was, you're the theater person. I don't relate that way.
Yeah.
I like to write.
Yeah.
And I was enamored with my idea.
Yes, you would be.
Yeah. You know, and I felt the space between us. I liked the space between us because I felt my person in myself. Oh, yes, that's how I relate to the world. I have that facility to lose myself in a scene, but that's not her way.
Exactly.
And I appreciated my friend for being able to speak up.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
I really appreciate it because that's communication. Yeah. And that's another notch in our friendship. We're communicating.
Yeah.
We're telling our truth.
There's also an opportunity for you to learn, if I want really to communicate and or help her, projecting my solutions onto her is not the answer. And I hope everybody can hear that as a sponsor. We share our experience, but be very, very aware that each person is different. They hear it differently. Well, you've heard here in our share, we've been together long enough, how I've said something and then somebody else comes back and tries to talk about what they think I heard, what they think they heard about what I said. And it's like not really, it's not even close to what I said.
Right.
Because they interpreted it through their own lenses, and had a different understanding of it. So anyway.
So it just takes practice.
It takes practice of listening to people.
Okay.
Yeah. And to be aware that there are differences in personalities. You just made a very crucial observation about the difference in meditation styles.
Yes.
So you are very inclined toward using your imagination from what it is you indicated.
Yes.
And in one of the spiritual genres, that's a specific training that you may or may not be familiar with. Saint Ignatius Loyola, the Ignatian Method is.
I've gone through the exercises.
Oh well, see, I went through the 19th annotation, which is a weekly training for a year, and it's all based on using your imagination. At the end of it, I look back over my training, and it was a waste of time, because that's not how I approach anything. I don't use my imagination that way. So when I had this a different training with Thomas Keating, which is the contemplative practice at a very different methodology, I took to that like a duck takes to water immediately, because that's my personality. That's the way I relate to my own spirit and this whole whatever we call consciousness improvement. So, but that taught me that there are a lot of people that get a real benefit from the Ignatian training. There are a lot of people that get a real benefit from the contemplative practice training. And then there's lots of spaces in between. So anyway, we were having a long discussion about personality differences, and that's really the point.
Thank you so much for engaging in this conversation with me.
Well, it's so important now that we're so experienced. Each one of us is experienced to whatever level you've engaged in the step inventory, the step 4 inventory work. You're much more conscious of how you think, how you feel, how you perceive reality. And as you've listened to other people share about their experiences, you can see that there's differences in the way people react.
Yes.
Yep.
I just had a question. Could you sort of define what you mean by motive? Is that like the same thing as self-seeking? It's the action?
Well, self-seeking is a particular, perhaps, brand of motive, but motive, you can look the word up in a dictionary. I encourage you to do that, but it literally, the word comes from the Latin movere, M-O-V-E-R-E, which means to move. So motive is what moves us. I mean, in the morning, I am motivated to make a pot of coffee. All right, because I want to have some hot coffee and the caffeine that goes with it in the morning. I am motivated to go to the work of grinding the beans and making the coffee, which is some work attached to it, because I want the outcome. What drives me to do that? What motivates me to take a walk every day for an hour? I mean, I do it every day. I have exercised every day for an hour minimum since I was 18 years old. What motivates me to do that? my physical health. I feel better. All right. Yeah. So it's motive is what moves us to do something. That's why the 10th question there in the column 4 is so important. What's the benefit or the value of holding that resentment? It's the motive. What moves us to hold this otherwise very deleterious emotion of resentment? Emotions kill people. They make us very sick, and at the very least, they make us very disturbed and negative. Why do we hold this resentment? It's a critical question. What motivates us?
Okay.
Does that help?
Uh-huh. Then, so I looked up selfish and self-centered, and they both sound like the same thing. But you're saying selfish is the
No,
is
I didn't say anything about selfish. I was talking about motive in answer to your question.
Yeah, but I mean.
Well, wait. In the 4th column, that first word is self-seeking. The second word is selfish. I have definitions there. How do they differ?
Okay, self-seeking is the behavior.
Yes.
And the selfish is the attitude.
The attitude or the thinking. Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And then, so self-centered, how is that different from selfish?
I don't believe it is different.
Oh, okay, good.
Now, Bill uses the term selfish - self-centered.
Uh-huh.
I'm assuming he's using those as synonyms.
Yeah.
62.
Yeah. Okay. Because I looked those up and they sort of said the same thing. So
but in my arbitrary definition to make a distinction between selfish and self-centered and self-seeking, on the 4th column worksheet, I've defined self-seeking as behavior and selfish as thinking. And in the same way, arbitrarily, I define self-centered as the root of all of that. Self-centered is the state of being totally concerned only with myself.
Okay.
And so then selfish would be an expression of self-centeredness in thinking, and self-seeking would be an expression of self-centeredness in behavior. But those are arbitrary because I want to make distinctions between the words so that they have some meaning.
Yeah. Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
I'm wondering if you can speak to, and I understand if you don't want to, but I wonder if you can speak to kind of the culture of our 12-step recovery programs and both AA and whatever you know of OA and Al-Anon for that matter. Because I've been abstinent in OA it'll be 43 years this month. And I've been told by Al-Anon and OA sponsors that I work the program harder than anyone they know. And my experience is that the things that I'm learning in the workshop and putting into practice, both in this workshop and the other one that I did with you, but nobody talks this language. Well, actually, I'm really angry about it.
Yeah, no,
my inclination is to beat myself up, and I'm not doing that because I see in my work how hard I am on myself. And sometimes when I'm doing my work and I see things, it's like I don't even have to formally work a 6th and 7th step. It's just like, it got to go, and so I won't do that anymore because I know that I do my best. I really know that in my heart of hearts. But I'm very frustrated. And my current sponsor in OA is, abstaining 45 or 46 years, something like that. And I had a really good sponsor for a long time, and she had to go and die. And she always directed me to the steps. But most people, they direct,
Yeah.
And I'm thinking ahead to like, anyway, if you could just talk to the cult, what you know about it. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's a big subject. I'm going to make it a little comment. At least that's my anticipation.
Yeah, I don't want to diss on the organizations.
I've got two articles that I've written, and I've just made a note to send you them. One is on when did meetings become the program, and the other is the program of recovery. And it addresses the concern, which was brought to a culmination when I attended the international conference in Atlanta 5 years ago, or whenever it was. Mm-hmm. Because I got very frustrated. Of the 300 subjects that they had in the program, there were over 300 subjects. There were less than 30 that were on the steps and spiritual awakening and spirituality.
Wow.
Yes, less than 10%. And I thought, this is the international conference, for God's sakes. Right. So maybe the short version is 40 years ago, a group of men, and it was a group of men in Denver, began, and it's a longer story that I want to get into, began to talk about doing the instructions in the big book exactly like they are in the big book in a small group of men. Mm-hmm. It was revolutionary at the time. And that's not revolutionary talk to you all, because that's the way we started out. That's the way we talk. But in their AA group, it was like revolutionary, because I do believe the treatment centers had hijacked, psychology had hijacked the vocabulary and the approach in the culture of AA to recovery. Another story for another day. And they, as a result of their doing that work, of course, people moved and they brought that work where they were. And then a couple of years after they had all did this work, they decided to have a conference called the Fellowship of the Spirit. And this is the point of this story.
Yeah,
it's called Fellowship of the Spirit. They have had an annual conference every year. That first one I went to was 300 people, I think it was, from all over the world, who had done the work by this time out of the book with the guidance of a sponsor. But that was it. There was 300 people gathered in the world that had done this work this way. But of course, since then, it's because of missionary work, people move and that kind of thing, carrying the message. Now I believe there's between 12 and 15 fellowships of the Spirit around the world. You could Google it.
Right. Yeah,
you can Google it and you can see it. In fact, in OA, A Vision for You, that telephone culture, is in fact based on the Fellowship of the Spirit approach to the big book.
Yes.
So it's a source of, one of the reasons I do what I do is because what you're talking about is having a renaissance in the big book and the step work, so that in fact we go back to the original spirit of what it's all about. It's not about meetings and it's not about feeling good. It's about being changed and turning to having a relationship with power, and then helping other people find that relationship. Now I'm going to stop because I could go on for a while.
Thank you.
Well, does that help?
It validates my experience. Thank you. But yeah, I'll look forward to reading the articles. And I'm just already doing, my 11th step prayer about where I'm going to go in the future.
What is that?
where I'm going to go after this workshop ends in terms
I
of
see. Yeah.
support that I need between, my small group and then coming here. It's like
Yeah.
amazing. I mean, there's a group for people that it's a private, a private meeting called Diaspora for people that are abstaining a certain amount of years, 20 years or more. And it's just unbelievable, the lack of,
Yeah.
and I don't say that I've always been a kind of a purist with the big book, and I've been criticized for it.
Of course.
And somebody doesn't want to be my friend because of it.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not into the big book because it's so, and I don't even know what she said. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So I'm just feeling, like, where am I going to land?
It's a very healthy question. Where am I going? What environment is going to, am I going to find the nourishment I need, as well as the opportunity to help other people? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. And people don't believe me that I've been abstaining 42 years. There's a whole gig around that too.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, I really have not eaten between my meals for that long. It's really true.
Yeah.
And that's a whole different story. But
Right.
anyway, okay. Well, thank you for speaking to that. I'll look forward to reading the articles. Thanks so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm not ready for the sex inventory, but I've got some fears.
All right.
So the unpacking on the page, I'm fearful of the potential loss of parts of myself because the armor I've put in place. Why? I'm not coming to the table with all of me relationally. I won't know what's possible. Hampered self and usefulness to God. My life force or / flame will dwindle. I'll find myself where I'm not supposed to have wound up. I will have wasted my life.
What does that mean? I will find myself where I'm not supposed to have wound up. By whose criteria?
Oh, mine.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
all right.
Thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I realized in the last conversation that you had, I had taken the initial fear that I started out with the potential loss of parts of myself and put that in the column 1. And I don't know that was accurate. But why do I have it? Well, the withstanding since childhood. And behavior manifest is inauthenticity. And the opposite of this fear, this was interesting, candid expression of my limitations.
Oh, why of your limitations?
I don't know.
Why not just candid expression of who I am?
Well, there you go again.
All right.
Yeah, and then what behavior at 5 would be authenticity of myself.
What is it? I mean, you got some wonderful words there, but what does authenticity for you mean, behaviorally?
The word edit comes to mind, and I don't know if it's editing. Sometimes I feel like I say too much or divulge too much, but then I know I hide too.
All right. So, yeah, so you're saying that you need to be more conscious in the sense of editing so that you're not minimizing or maximizing what it is you're saying, that you're kind of being transparent.
Just like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Yep. The book suggests on page 58, titled How It Works, that rigorous honesty is the key. And that's what you're really talking about, authenticity. And my own sponsor put it in these words, transparency. And I said, well, what does that mean? He said, my insides and outsides match.
Yeah.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But make sure it's not negative where you're headlining your limitations.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting that like stomps right there. So
Yeah.
I left it there.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Now, Marianne Williamson had a wonderful sort of a poem, I guess, and I'm not sure that it was hers or whether it was Nelson Mandela's. I've heard some controversy about that. But be that as it may, she said, the biggest fear we have is the fear of our goodness, which was maybe relevant to yours.
I think you just hit something kind of loud.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for your work. Yep.
I just realized that I haven't been honest and authentic my whole life to be who I am. And my choices were what I thought I wanted because everybody else wanted it.
Oh, yeah.
And it wasn't necessarily what I wanted or what I dreamed of, you know. So I am where I'm here. I have a beautiful family. And I'm in a relationship with a decent human being that I've wanted to leave since I'm 35 years old. And never could do it because I was always worried that my children wouldn't have an intact family. And that was very important to me because my parents were divorced, both sides, and their parents were divorced. So I thought the buck's going to stop here. And I've just had a lot of disappointments in my relationship. And the thing that I've realized is I had a right to ask or want those things that I didn't think I needed or wanted. Or not that I wanted, but I thought it was a fairy tale.
So how do you reconcile this now?
Well, I think that I don't know whether rationalizing, but I think honestly, my life has not turned out badly.
It's not over, by the way. Your life is not over, but go ahead.
Right. Yeah, I know. But I start to think at 81 years old, I'm not going to go make a new life for myself.
Well, I think that would be common sense, but you might have 10 or 15 or 20 years.
Well, I don't know about that, but what I wanted to...
Oh, that's true. You do not know. That is true.
Right.
All right.
Right. But what I do know is I want to behave well to my husband, who I've abused because who I've abused verbally and, you know, did a lot of things that instead of leaving, you know, I for my comfort.
Yeah.
And so I want to I'm married 58 years.
Yeah.
So I want to have the relationship where he deserves to have respect for just being a human being. And I realized that half my suffering has been because I didn't act the way I wanted to act. And when I couldn't have the relationship like I wanted, I you know, sold myself down. You know, I was angry and resentful, spiteful.
Right. So this is all wonderful. I mean, this is what a great consciousness it is at this point. And the next few steps are going to help you come to a picture of yourself that you want to aspire to now. And part of it would be, as you just said, to respect him. And I'm assuming that to be kind to him and
Absolutely.
to be grateful that you have right now a stable relationship and a family that goes with that, and the benefits. Don't look at the liabilities of it or the what ifs and could haves, because that's ridiculous. And live in a state of sort of adjustment and acceptance.
Well, I'll tell you, I that has been my goal now since I'll tell you that your teachings
Yes.
and your stories
Yes.
have enabled me to move to a place of authenticity.
Yes.
And I'm able to not be guilty.
Yes.
My actions don't lead me anyway, but I wanted to say my writing today in my two-way prayer was about making mistakes was okay, and using my judgmentalness, because you didn't do it my way and this and that, is to look for the imperfections in life and embrace them and look at that as just part of the journey.
Yeah. No. Yeah, and even the smile and the gentleness of your tone tells me it's coming from the organic center. It's wonderful.
Yeah, well, it's because of my sisters in this program and everybody share that I'm able to feel safe and supported, and I know where to get what I need.
Yeah. I do.
So.
Yeah. No, thanks. See, because that's a wonderful witness to the spiritual awakening that is promised when we start, and you're already having, an experience of that. Wonderful.
Thank you.
There we go.
Yes.
I'd like to inquire in regards to the 7 deadly sins and how to approach writing on each of them.
Yeah. Well, first, I haven't done any work around them. They come out of the Catholic tradition. Mm-hmm. I believe that Bill Wilson was exposed to them through Father Ed Dowling, who was his spiritual director. He engaged with Father Ed Dowling in 1940, a Jesuit priest who became his spiritual director for the next 20 years. And in fact, Bill submitted to the training to become a Catholic, and at the very last moment decided that he would not affiliate with any type of religious organization for fear that it would prejudice alcoholics against coming into AA. So he stopped that and didn't ever complete it. I'm saying that just to give you the full picture. So if you wanted to know more about the 7 deadly sins, you could probably go to Google and see a paragraph or two on each of those categories, or look them up in a dictionary. And they would give you enough that would give you a little traction as to what they mean. But I'm not equipped to comment on them, since I've had actually no interest in them as an approach to the step 4 inventory.
Okay, because I was wondering if that was one of the things that one of the things that we can choose to do.
Oh, you absolutely can choose to do it. That's why I bring it up. Bill makes reference to them in the step 4 inventory in his comments in 12 and 12. That's why I bring it up, just to let you know that Bill did think about it, and he made some comments in very general way in the step 4, 12 and 12. And that might, in fact, be helpful. Read step 4 from the 12 and 12, because he does give a sentence or two to each one of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's something in regards to approaching it. It would be a matter of just kind of reflecting upon it and.
Yeah, see if there's anything that you resonate with when it comes to any one of those words or their description.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And I just wanted to comment about, I have come upon, it's called the Big Book Awakening.
Yes, Dan Sherman's work. He went through the work at the same time I did with Joe Hawk. Joe Hawk was one of the people from Denver that moved to Santa Monica back in the 80s. And Joe Hawk was the one that brought the methodology of approaching the big book this way to the West Coast, actually, to at least to West LA. And then Dan wrote his book based on Joe's instructions to Dan. And at the same time, later on, I had done the work with Joe, and he had given me instructions, and I wrote my first book on the basis of Joe's instructions to me. Now, my approach to the instructions that Joe gave me were different than the approach that Dan Sherman, his interpretation. You speak about the differences between an introvert and an extrovert. Dan was a introvert of the highest count. On a scale of 1 to 10, he was a 10 introvert. All right. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm probably a 4 introvert. I'm probably on a scale of 1 to 10, a 6 extrovert. So I'm sort of right in the middle, but straddling more on the extroverted side. And so Dan's interpretation and the writing of the book, his book, reflects his perception and experience, as does mine reflect my perception and my experience. They're different. They're just a different. The instructions are almost the same, but the approach and the interpretation has just enough of a difference that there's a difference between the two guidebooks.
Yeah.
Probably more than you needed to know.
I actually have been looking for meetings that are spiritual. Like I've been kind of driven. I've been wanting to get more deep into the spirituality of recovery and grow in that way. So I've been searching for meetings that encompass that. And so I came across the Big Book Awareness, and I have heard about the Vision for You as well. And I have gone on them, and I do enjoy them. But I like it when the big book is broken open, so to speak. Like I just find that's what I hunger for.
You'll find several groups that do that with different names. Then Big Book Awakening is actually a flag that represents the Dan Sherman contingent. The Fellowship of the Spirit is actually the flag under which the people that came out of Denver and sort of my how would you say, not legacy and not it's where I come from genetically, if you will, in the steps.
Okay. Now you mentioned about Fellowship of the Spirit. Is that a recovery group as well, or is that was just a term?
It's a term that normally implies people who have done the steps out of the big book with the kind of precision that I've introduced you to here. Yeah. And then, of course, the OA group is called A Vision for You.
Right.
And so that's the flag under which they operate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Super. Thanks.
Then there's a group called Prime Time, someplace, and different places. And typically they have also an interpretation that's pretty structured, although each one of them has, you have to be careful because there's personalities, of course, and interpretations that may be more rigid than other people. Because we're human beings.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why we have Lutherans and Episcopalians and Baptists.
Yeah.
Same message, different interpretation.
Right.
All right. Thanks, Sharon.
So I have completed the 4th step work 3 and 4, and I went on to the fear inventory. You almost made my fear inventory.
Yeah.
Or really just like kind of breaking the code kind of thing. It's like, the perfectionism came out on me, but or getting a task done. And it was really odd. I thought maybe others had this experience, but when I wrote out my fear inventory, what came out of me was my character defects at first. And the fears came, the last three were the fears. And it's almost like I worked backwards from, oh, here's my behavior. Where did that come from? And it went to three fears that make me anxious, make me go, even all these years. One has to do with finances. One has to do with, I'm afraid of being powerless when confronted with the legal system. A lot of these I don't know where they stem from. The one I do know where it stems from is I was afraid of not living up to my potential because I heard that a lot growing up. So, but the one that kind of threw me was, why was I afraid of being powerless when confronted with the legal system? It's always been that way. I'm not afraid of doctors. I'm not afraid of hospitals. I'm not afraid of nuns and priests and people like that. But the legal system, police, lawyers, politicians, systems, I don't trust them, and I get all tight, and I feel like I'm voiceless. But when I worked through all three of them, whether it was the finances, the authority, the potential, all of them came to the same fear, and that's that I'll just give up. I have a fear I'm just going to give up and become despondent and be back where I was over 17 years ago, an addict. That's where all three of them took me, is that I don't want to ever go back there. And I don't ever want to feel like I'm just going to give up. And that was my wall, and it was the wall on all three of them.
Yeah. And then, and that's wonderful there. It sounds very productive for you, but what would be the answer to the question of the fear that comes up if in fact you give up and in fact return to your life of darkness?
I won't come out of it. It was just the despondency. I don't think I can't remember ever being suicidal, but I always remember just not wanting to wake up. Just,
Yeah.
Be done. Just be done.
Yeah.
And it's a healthy fear. It keeps me on the spiritual path. When I first got on was what transformation has come through for me. And so far, the one that is really, the one I always had, all these years is that I'm an addict through and through. Step one, I'm an addict. Whether I'm powerless, I still work on that one. But that one gets thrown in my face quite often. But I know I'm an addict through and through.
Well, what does powerless mean to you?
Powerless means, well, now I do feel the transformation of surrender. I really don't have power. I don't have power to change people. I don't have power to change a system. I don't have the control I want, and it's not there. I guess power, I think control, and I don't have that. I think the fear is a lack of safety. I don't feel safe. I don't trust. So I do see probably down the line doing a fourth step on trust, whether I even trust my higher power enough.
Yeah.
So I can see that. I didn't hit it this time, but coming at the end of this, it's like, ooh, man, yeah, I could see me working on that. So, but what I was saying was that through and through, there's nothing else for me but a spiritual life. It's nothing else for me but a spiritual path, because without that, I will go back.
Yeah.
And I don't ever want to go back. So
I think the true definition of spirit and human are synonymous. You've heard the phrase, am I a spiritual being seeking a human experience, or am I a spiritual being seeking a human, spiritual being seeking a human experience? And I've thought about that a lot. In fact, recently, as of this morning, was doing some reflection on it. And the answer from my standpoint is yes. They're the same terms, human and spirit. It's one is just the immaterial aspect, the other is the material aspect. It's like a coin having two sides. And as I've said before, you may have heard it, I've attempted not to use the word control in my vocabulary because it's a delusion. I really don't control, as you just said, I don't control anything inside or outside of me. I have some influence, but you were talking about power, and the words that I wrote down as you were talking are the words that are meaningful to me. I don't have sufficient power. I have power. I have lots of, I got up this morning. I had breakfast this morning. Yeah, I did some writing this morning. I have some power, but I don't have sufficient power, and I don't have effective power to really accomplish what it is I want to accomplish, or even know what it is I want to accomplish. And that's been my journey, is seeking and being surprised by the discovery. So yeah, trust is the wonderful, and it's your kind of like the jewel that you've mined out of at least maybe your reflections in this conversation that perhaps would be productive for you to spend some time on. What does it mean trusting even yourself?
Yeah.
Let alone the program, the process, your sponsor, the world, other people, and then, whew, God, as I don't understand it. Absolutely wonderful. I mean, that would be a very productive reflection for you. But the word powerless for me, I translate, and it's meaningful to me, because powerless, I've become brain dead to. I've said it and heard it so many times that it has no meaning. But no choice, that has power for me. So you might want to play with a word that gives you or re-empowers your whole sense of powerlessness. Yeah. Make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. So let's conclude then. Thank you very much. Wonderful witness to the power of this process. And also, many of you commented on the power of the group. And I was particularly impressed with that because, of course, that is my experience with doing this group work. So I'm glad that you're having that experience and aware of it. Please join me in the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Thank you, everybody.